What separates the great from the greatest? The very best athletes also train their subconscious minds. Today, I'll show you how hypnosis gives you that mental edge. Welcome to the Grace Smith podcast, where we explore the power of hypnotherapy and the subconscious mind to create real, lasting change. Today, we're diving into a game-changing topic: how hypnosis can unlock peak performance in sports. For years now, I've had the privilege of working with professional athletes across multiple sports: golfers, tennis players, runners, soccer players, and even Olympians. And I've seen firsthand how their greatest battles are not just physical, they're mental. The subconscious mind is the key to overcoming performance anxiety, breaking through mental barriers, and stepping into a flow state where everything just clicks. But here's the thing: most athletes are never taught how to train their minds. They might be told to do a visualization here or there, but it's very, very minimal at best. They perfect their swing, their shot, their footwork, but they don't always realize that their performance is being shaped by subconscious beliefs, habits, and automatic responses that are running beneath the surface. So today, we're going to begin to change that perception of how to be an elite athlete. I'm going to share with you the biggest mental challenges that hold athletes back and how to fix them, breakthroughs from real professional athletes I've worked with, the hypnotherapy techniques that can help you improve focus, confidence, and resilience. Now, today's recording is not just for professional athletes. So whether you're a weekend warrior, a student athlete, or someone who just loves competing at any level, your mindset is what determines how well you perform under pressure. The good news is you can train your mind just like you train your body. If you're new to hypnotherapy, that's great. I will also be helping you overcome the biggest myths about hypnotherapy and showing you how it fits into modern sports psychology. By the end of this episode, you'll have real, actionable tools to help train your mind for peak performance. Let's get started. Many athletes and their coaches are unfamiliar with hypnotherapy, or they assume it's just for relaxation. So let's start by briefly debunking some myths. But before we do any of that, let me just say how much I love working with professional athletes. As someone who was a theater kid, personally, I couldn't believe when I first started working with professional athletes how much I loved it. And one of the reasons I love it is because I love extreme people and I love intense people. The amount of dedication, the amount of intensity, the amount of single-minded focus on one thing. I just love it. It lights me up. And I love seeing people who know what they're capable of, who set the bar at the highest possible level, who want to achieve glory at the highest level that there is. The challenge with that is people who are built that way tend to be extremely hard on themselves. So even if they are doing phenomenally well by every metric and standard, and they're one of the best in the world, if they're not winning and winning consistently, they can lose the love of this game that has defined their whole life. And when that happens, it's very, very difficult to come back from, unless you come back from it at the subconscious level and then it's easy. So most of the time when I first start working with an athlete, it's because they're looking for a performance turnaround. They're deflated. They are potentially weeks, maybe months away from actually losing their ability to be a professional athlete because their performance hasn't been where it is. They're disheartened. They've come to resent this game that they once loved so much. We've got a lot to tackle at the subconscious mind. It's not just having them visualize their swing over and over again, or visualizing taking a couple milliseconds off of their finish time. There is so much subconscious emotion that goes into peak performance. And I have learned a tremendous amount working with these, just, they're beasts, and they're really, really hungry to win. So it's really fun and I love it. And I hope I get to continue to work with the world's best athletes and share with all of you what are the things that we've done together that have unlocked the greatest amount of change the fastest. So there's a lot of trial and error that goes into this because most folks are working with sports psychologists, which are fantastic. And those psychologists know a lot more about sports than I do. I am not a sports expert by any stretch of the imagination. I am a leading expert on the subconscious mind, however, and that is such a massive part of what ultimately ends up being your performance. So lots of trial and error because not a lot of precedence for how to use this tool to become the very best version of yourself in a sports setting. And yet we're seeing such incredible results so quickly across the board. All right. After sharing my little love of working with such intense and obsessed human beings, let's go ahead and start clearing up some of the biggest misconceptions about hypnotherapy so that if you need to send this to your parents to listen to or send this to your coach to listen to because you've seen or heard some of the stories in the media about my clients and the turnarounds that they are having because of hypnotherapy and you need to get your team on board, have them start here. A lot of people think hypnotherapy is just about getting relaxed or potentially even zoning out. And while relaxation is certainly part of the hypnotherapy experience, it's actually really about focus. So sometimes, whether it's a CEO or it's an athlete, anyone who wants to operate at the highest level of what they're doing, sometimes they will express concern that they're worried that if they get happier, they'll lose their drive, or if they get too good at relaxing, that they won't bring intensity to what they're doing. And I understand where that line of thinking comes from, but it couldn't be more opposite than what the output actually is. So you can think of it this way. When an athlete is in the quote unquote zone, right? We've heard of this before. You're in the zone or you're in a flow state. They're not physically tense and they're not at all passive. They're locked in. And that's exactly what hypnotherapy does. It trains your mind to enter into the flow state on demand so that you can stay focused, react faster, and perform at your best. That brings us to another myth to overcome. If you've only seen hypnotherapy in movies or stage shows, you might think it's about someone controlling your mind. But here's the truth. Hypnosis actually gives you more control over your mind and your body than you've ever had. It helps you take charge of the subconscious patterns that influence your performance every day. In fact, elite athletes already use forms of hypnosis sometimes without realizing it. They might call it mental rehearsal, guided visualization, or mindset training. Now, the difference is if you were to just close your eyes and imagine making a bunch of three-pointers, that's better than not doing it. The part of your brain that lights up when you are actually playing basketball, to access that part of your brain, you need to be in the theta brainwave state when you visualize. You can't just close your eyes and start doing it. You've got to go from the beta brainwave state, which is normal waking consciousness, down into the theta brainwave state. Then when you visualize, you are rewiring your brain extremely rapidly. So hypnosis is simply a way to fast track that process and make those mental shifts stick. Now let's talk about another misconception. This is a big one. Some people assume that only gullible or weak-minded individuals can be hypnotized. But in reality, it's actually more the case that the best candidates for rapid change in hypnotherapy are highly focused, disciplined, goal-oriented, brilliant people, which describes most serious athletes. Now, hypnotherapy can work for everyone as long as you want the result and as long as you have the amount of sessions that you uniquely require, hypnotherapy will work for you. But think of it this way. There's a genius in your math class and the professor presents a new way of looking at a problem. And that student gets it like this. What do we know about their brain? It's working very quickly. It's making connections very quickly. It's potentially making new neural pathways very quickly. For other people, it takes a little bit more time, a little bit more repetition, and that's fine and that's great. When someone takes that brain and applies hypnotherapy to it, they're seeing the results with the same rapid level of improvement. But athletes, especially professional athletes, they are so good physically at what they're doing. And they typically had talent very, very young. Now, they worked incredibly hard to become one of the best in the world. Talent certainly did not take them all the way, but that talent is kind of the equivalent of the mental IQ. Having that physicality and the ability to learn how to move your body in a way that makes you good at your particular sport is the same thing. And so hypnotherapy applied to that body and those mechanics also see improvements very, very quickly. Now, if you've ever lost track of time while playing a sport, or you've been so focused that everything else faded away, or instinctively executed a move without consciously thinking about it, then congratulations. You have already experienced what it's like to be in the theta brainwave state, which is where hypnotherapy takes place. The difference is we don't want that to happen by accident or whenever the body happens to do it. You want to be able to train yourself to get to that state on purpose. So if you're still wondering whether this really works and if it could really work for you, the research says yes. Studies have shown that hypnotherapy can improve confidence, focus, reaction time, and even physical endurance. In fact, one study in the Journal of Sport and Exercise Psychology found that soccer players who used hypnotherapy had significantly higher self-efficacy, their belief in their ability to perform, which translated into better performance on the field. Not only did they perform better immediately after their hypnotherapy sessions, but they maintained their edge even 4 weeks later. If you want to read more of the cutting edge research about hypnotherapy, we will put a link to our research document in the show notes below, and that document has been meticulously reviewed by our science review board. Now, we see this across all sports: golf, tennis, swimming, running. In fact, let me share a testimonial with you from a sport that you may never have considered hypnotherapy could actually help with. This is from a client I worked with a long time ago, Mark Gooding, and he wrote, "My difference in training was evident, and my performances reflected that. I competed at the Free Diving World Championships and was very pleased with my dives. I had used hypnosis before as an aid to relaxation, so I did have an understanding of it, though never specific to my performance in sport. The challenge for me was competition nerves. My sport of free diving depends upon being in the most relaxed state as possible to get the maximum breath hold during dives. I wanted hypnosis to get me into the zone, focused and very relaxed before my dives. After my session with Grace, she made a recording specific for a pre-dive relaxation. I used this before my dives. Also, I had a recording of the session where we addressed key issues and techniques, mostly on my perception of challenges, particularly towards the end of the dives, where it is physically and mentally quite tough. I found my session with Grace Smith so helpful. She's a great coach and will use the techniques and recordings for my competitions in the future." So as you can see, Mark and I only had one hypnotherapy session together, and yet it made a big difference in his free diving competitions. Now, I wondered when I first started working with athletes if the fact that I myself am not one and was never one would be an issue, but it turns out it's actually fantastic because these folks are already surrounded by the best in the world. They have the best coaches, they have the best trainers, they've been brought up systematically to be an incredible athlete, and they don't need someone coming in with a whole bunch of strategy and ideas on how to change the technical or the creative aspect of their game. I come in as one of the world's leading experts in the subconscious mind saying, "You're already incredible at what you do. I'm going to help you take away the stuff that's getting in the way of your abilities. And I'm going to listen to your trainer, and I'm going to listen to your coach, and I'm going to listen to your caddy, and I'm going to listen to potentially your teammates if you want me to, so that I can get a full picture, put all of the puzzle pieces together and see the complete mosaic of what your potential is, and then be the one to get into the subconscious with you and remove the stuff that's getting in the way of that." And so for that reason, teams have embraced me so beautifully and right off the bat because they know I'm not there to try to change anything. There's zero conflicting advice. And as far as being able to help someone with their techniques, the coach just tells me this is exactly what we're doing. This is exactly what we're focused on. I can say those exact words after we've done the work at figuring out what has been in the way of being able to execute the way the coach is advising the athlete to. So it's been this really beautiful symbiotic relationship. And so without even personally being a sports aficionado or fanatic, my work has been able to help these folks step into their greatness in a way that they feel safe, they feel happy, they've fallen back in love with their sport. And it has been such a tremendous honor to be able to do this. And it's such a fantastic learning experience for me. So it's just been a joy. I love it. I love it. So now that we have overcome some of those myths, let's talk about the real mental challenges that athletes face. Because once you understand those, you'll see exactly why training your subconscious is such a game changer. All right, some of the biggest mental challenges that athletes face include overthinking versus trusting their instincts. Athletes often get stuck in their heads rather than performing intuitively. When something doesn't go the way that they expected it to, that monkey mind can activate, and all of these thoughts about how to fix it can come up. And when the body goes into fixing mode, it is not in flow state. So the ability to play with freedom, the ability to trust one's instincts, the ability to trust one's body to do what it needs to do are imperative. In another episode on this podcast, we're going to be talking about the difference between challenge versus threat states. They're both stress states. One is adaptive and helps you perform better. The other is when everything starts to fall apart. But they both have an elevated heart rate. Not just a matter of telling yourself to stop overthinking. You've got to actually have a physiological response that clicks into a challenge state that allows you to trust yourself, even when that heart rate is there. Otherwise, the heart rate stays elevated, and because the brain perceives that as a bad thing, like, oh God, I'm not calm, and now I'm not in a flow state, which isn't actually necessarily the case, just the viewing of how you feel physically as negative impacts performance negatively. So this is something called stress reappraisal. You've got to be able to look at what your body is doing so that you can meet the challenges of the present demands, what is required of you in this moment to perform well. And if you genuinely believe that you've got the right stuff, you've got what you need to be able to handle the demands in front of you, you can be in a challenge state. You can trust yourself regardless of how intense it is. So what we've just been discussing is an element of a larger umbrella challenge for professional athletes, which is called performance anxiety. Now, this can contain overthinking versus trusting your instincts, but it's also just a larger issue. If there's an upcoming tournament or an upcoming game and you're losing sleep about it before it's even here, that's performance anxiety. Worrying about who's in the stands, worrying about what the media is going to ask you after the fact, if that's a component, worrying about what your teammates are going to think. There's so many different elements to performance anxiety, and this is when having one-on-one hypnotherapy can really, really help, because some of the things that your brain might be concerned about today stem from something that happened when you were 8 years old. I mean, I know for sure the reason I never pursued sports, even though I was a good dancer and my parents are both athletic, is because when I was 5 or 6 years old, I was taken to T-ball and I kept hitting the stick that the ball was on and not the ball. And I didn't love sports enough, but my brain just went, nope, no thank you. That was horrible. That was embarrassing. I'm not good at this. I'm not interested. And so for the rest of my life, every time I had to, be in gym class, I'd be doing cartwheels in the outfield instead of whatever I was supposed to be doing out there. So even when you love sports and they become your life, there are moments like that in your subconscious mind. Now, you were able to override 85% of them, 90% of them, because you love the sport so much and it is the thing that lights you up. So those embarrassing moments, you were able to push past them, but it doesn't mean that they're gone. and they can be triggered and they can come up to the surface at extremely inopportune times. So when you can go back and reframe those experiences, they're not going to inhibit your performance in the present day. So that's one of the things that I find so interesting about performance anxiety, is that it tends to have so much less to do with however you performed literally a couple days ago or the last time you were on the course. It so often has to do with these moments that could have been decades earlier, but that are still there, they still sting, and they need to be reframed. Another mental challenge is fear of failure. So many athletes struggle with the subconscious belief that failure equals worthlessness, that if they cannot be good at this thing, it's all over for them. And at the professional level, I've heard multiple times things like, if I can't make it here, there's nothing else I can do. And they don't necessarily mean it literally, because these are smart, hardworking, tenacious people. It's more like the idea of going from being on a team or being outside on this gorgeous court or doing this thing that they love and traveling the world, and going from that into like an office building with fluorescent lighting. It just makes their skin crawl. And the stakes feel so high constantly. Sometimes they actually are. Sometimes they're not, but the body and the brain are acting like it's the championship of the universe. And if they don't perform perfectly today, that their whole life will be horrible. And then they're just acting like that day in and day out. And obviously for hobbyists, nobody wants to constantly feel like the worst person on the team, or they don't want to be made fun of by their colleagues, or they don't want to feel like they're spending time and money on something where they're not progressing. So being able to reevaluate every experience as a learning experience, and being able to train the subconscious to believe that as long as you're out there doing the work, progress is being made. Then for the hobbyist, for the person who is, still an amateur, that can be really fantastic and powerful fuel to get you there. And for the professional athlete, you just got to lower the stakes 9 times out of 10, just to be able to have the stamina and the withdrawal, so that not every single little mishap feels like total and complete utter failure. It just has to be viewed as a learning experience, and we're on to the next thing, especially something like golf, that you could potentially be a professional golfer into your 50s. So if you're beating yourself up every single tournament, every single week, all season at 23 years old, that's going to do far more physiological damage than the sport itself over time. So just as a mechanism of longevity and psychological resilience, we've got to be able to take the stakes down in the subconscious mind, and then that fear of failure dissipates. And another way to support that is to cultivate an identity beyond the sport. This is another tool that was discussed a lot in my psychological resilience class recently, and also in my self and identity class, and also in my peak performance and competition class. This comes up a lot, that if you identify as one thing, if you identify as the founder of your company, and then the company revenue starts to tank, so does your self-worth. And if you view yourself as just this one thing, then it's very difficult to bring those stakes down. But if you can start to convince your subconscious that in addition to this one thing, you are also a spouse or a best friend or a mother or a father or a son or a daughter or someone who is interested in painting, you can bring in anything possible, so that if you don't do well that weekend at your sport, you still feel really good about the human who you are. And that's not just some like mamby-pamby, oh, kumbaya thing. You've got to be able to reset. You can't take a outcome that was not what you wanted into the next tournament. You can't take that into the next game. You've got to be able to reset, learn from it, and then go in with a fresh, clean slate. And one of the most adaptive ways to be able to do that is to understand that you're a good person, whether that game was won or lost. You deserve good things, and you have an opportunity to come back and do it again. That reset is so key, and having this diversified identity beyond sports is really smart, right? You wouldn't put all of your money into one stock. that would be really unintelligent. You want to diversify your portfolio in the same way you want to diversify your identity. So if that one takes a hit, you still believe that you are worthy and deserving of great things. That creates psychological resilience. And then you get to keep going and kick butt at the next opportunity. Thank you for joining me in today's episode into how hypnotherapy can unlock peak athletic performance. As you've heard, this topic genuinely excites me because I've witnessed firsthand the incredible results athletes experience when they train their subconscious minds. But we've only just begun to uncover what's possible. In future episodes, we'll explore conversations with athletes and talk about their firsthand experience, how to build resistance and consistent performance under pressure. Go ahead and drop a comment on this episode and tell us what you need help with in your sport, your hobbies, and the places where you want to improve your competitive performance. I'd love to hear from you and be able to help by answering your questions in a future episode. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that future episode. And if you found today's content helpful, please share this with someone who would find it meaningful. See you in the next episode.